This is Kathryn Getzky, host of the Hope Matrix podcast. We are here to share science, stories, and strategies for how to hope. I'm the Chief Hope Officer of the Shine Hope Company, and Shine is the mnemonic for how we teach hope. So when we talk about hope, we talk about how we use stress skills, happiness habits, inspired actions, nourishing networks, and eliminating challenges, which are our thinking patterns that get in the way of our ability to hope. Hope is a skill. You can measure hope, you can teach hope, and you can start practicing skills to activate higher hope in your life today. And on this Hope Matrix podcast, we aim to bring in guests, experts in science, people with stories, and those that have strategies for activating hope in your life. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hope Matrix. So great to have you all listening today and to have our guest, Max Hennessy, here talking to us about hope and specifically looking at hope on the college campus and with the college experience. Just kind of a reminder, we talk about the 5 keys to hope and how we shine for hope using stress skills, happiness habits, inspired actions, creating nourishing networks, and eliminating challenges to hope, which are usually kind of those things like rumination, worry, internalizing failure, and more. So we're here today to talk, college students are struggling, and it's a time that is easy to get in high hopelessness. And, as we talk about, we want to proactively manage our hope. So we're here to talk a little bit more with Max today about that. So welcome, Max. So great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, it's amazing. And I met you, I can't remember, what year were you in school when we met?
I think it was 2020, beginning.
Okay, got it. And you have graduated, correctly?
Correct.
Is that correct? Yeah. And it's pretty amazing. You were just telling me you're out a year early. So you are having a unique experience. You're living in your college town but you're graduated. So yeah, that's awesome. It's a way to do it, I think. So anyway, can you let's start by just having you tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Mm-hmm. I'm Max Hennessy. I grew up in Norfolk, Virginia. I recently graduated from UVA's College of Arts and Science this past August with a degree in religious studies. I like to consider myself kind of a serial/lifelong entrepreneur. I started my first side hustle at 14, at which I would resell vintage video games online, which I did throughout high school. Then I started my first company, Icy Threads LLC, in which I would drop ship movie and TV show jerseys. And in 2018 till today, I started TMH Business Solutions, which is a web design and digital marketing company for small businesses and nonprofits. And at this current moment in my life, I'm working on getting my real estate license, and I'm actually wrapping up my first manuscript for Ad Infinitum, which will be released next year with New Degree Press.
Wow, that's amazing. Now the manuscript for what? What is it?
It's spelled like Ad Infinitum, but it's like Ad Infinitum. It's Latin for like forevermore.
Wow.
We can talk about that. We'll talk about this book later. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's a book. Amazing. I was so impressed with you because you reached out to me and I was needing some web help. And you said, here, I have some feedback from you on your website. And you just created this presentation and this comprehensive analysis. And I was so impressed with it, and then got me hooked up with some folks that were helping with the nonprofit work we're doing. And so it's been great to stay connected with you. And I'm grateful that you're willing to chat today, because I think as we've seen in the news, some recent suicides on college campus, and it's, not a surprise, hopelessness is at an all-time high. And one of our experts, Diane, had written an article in Psychology Today, and I think referenced 47% of youth feel anxious and depressed that are on the college campus, and such a high number. And we know the pandemic really increased that a lot. So what kind of was your experience on the college campus? And can you tell us what you're seeing and what you've seen from a mental health perspective?
Mhm. So I've kind of dealt with mental health my entire life, and I think when I got to college, it was kind of hard because it's the first time I was on my own. However, UVA had a really good system put in place. They have like a CAP center, and so they're able to kind of take me in and then refer me to like a psychiatrist and a psychologist in the area, which is really nice. But another step they've taken that I find very proactive, at least from institutional standpoint, is they have a 24/7 online video chat that they just released through CAPS for all students, which I think is very helpful as well.
Well, that's amazing. And what is CAPS? What does CAPS stand for? College counseling.
It's counseling and psychological services.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of colleges have those, which in the US, which is amazing. And what kind of inspired you to get support? I mean, is this something you've struggled with for a long time, or was this new in college? And how, did you find, I guess, the courage or inspiration to get help?
So it's kind of something I've dealt with, I think, ever since kind of my adolescence, like 10, 11 years old, just with anxiety and OCD tendencies and stuff like that, just kind of worried about everything. But in high school, it was always kind of my parents forcing me to go see someone or do something, which I never really liked. But in college, I finally, I was on my own, which is harder to kind of take that initiative to do it. However, I was in like constant contact with my sister, who was in Charlottesville at the time, because she was working for UVA, and my mom, and they were kind of understood my hesitancy towards doing it, and so they were able to kind of set it up in more of a way as seems like I'm doing it, even though it's kind of them suggesting me and guiding me towards it, but it's still kind of ultimately my choice because I was an adult and I had to do it. But to kind of have that support system and those two people in my life was definitely very helpful.
Yeah, that's really great. Yeah, and you bring up such a, when your parents tell you to do something, or anyone for that matter, at least me personally, the last thing I want to do is what they tell me to do. So how are they able to, I guess, lead you in that direction without, I guess, coming out right and saying it? Or what was the magic around that?
I think it was something that my mom said where she asked me if I wanted to get better or not. And the answer is obviously yes. However, when you're in kind of that mood or that state, like at least for like me personally, it's like I wouldn't even get out of my bed for 2 or 3 days at a time, just stuff like that. And when you act in those like self-defeating and self-destructive ways, in your mind, you justify it as all right, but in reality, it's not. And so I think it was my mom telling me, she was like, do you even want to be better? Do you want to get better? And I said yes. And she kind of was like, so you need to do XYZ, which was get out of bed. You need to have 3 meals a day, get outside, talk to other people. But most importantly, at least I think for me, is also having access to like medicine. And because I was just diagnosed with like ADHD earlier this year, and so I was just put on medication for that, and my life has like changed so much in terms of what I stress about, because now I stress more about the current moment than I mean, in high school I would finish projects 2 weeks before they were due, and I would plan out my entire, like a freshman year of college, I planned out my entire college transcript for 4 years, even though I didn't even end up majoring in what I ended up majoring in. It's like, so there was like honestly no point in doing that because I was worried about the future instead of being present. But.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that. I mean, too, the present, getting into the present moment and strategies for that, so important. But we were here talking about stress skills and getting out of the being out of the present moment, or the fifth key to hope, and eliminating those challenges, which are generally around thinking. So let's back up a little bit. Let's get back to the first key to hope that we really talk about, which is identifying and managing the stress response. And so, when we're triggered in life, and especially in college, it happens all the time with people and situations and tests and kind of all of that. We have this physiological response, our body does, and it can put us in fight or flight mode. And when we're there, we can't access our critical thinking and problem solving and learning and creativity and kind of all of that stuff. So let's get to, did you experience a lot of stress in college?
Yes, definitely a lot more internal stress that I put on myself. However, or rather than, I guess, kind of external factors, because I think I am very blessed to come from like a family that was able to help pay for my college and stuff like that. So I never really had to worry kind of financially, but I guess like academically, I kind of think myself into a loop and stuff like that, especially socially, just dealing with social anxiety and all of that as well.
Yep, so makes total sense. We all kind of experience it in different ways, and so much of it is self kind of induced, or we are so hard on ourselves, so critical, especially in times of change. So how did you manage that? Like, what did you have any specific things you did to help yourself? Did you exercise or meditate or walk, or like how were you able to kind of shift that?
So I've tried meditating a lot, and I still haven't really gotten it. However, what really works for me is to step back and kind of practice like hovering awareness of the situation, and just kind of look at it and look for kind of any value or what I can learn from it. And then I like to do sort of what's like a mindless activity. So I guess like walking or working out or showering, but I find those are actually like my best times of creativity, because it's when you're just stress-free and able to just kind of freely think. And that's honestly when a lot of kind of problems get solved, at least for me, just because when you stare at something for an hour, it's not going to change. You kind of have to change your environment and kind of just step back from the situation for a little bit.
Yeah, that's great and great advice. And it is so interesting how that happens, that we focus on it for hours and we can't figure it out. And then we go and shower and it comes to us. It's like, yeah, so interesting. And what about our second key? So happiness habits, things that kept you like healthy and kind of, I guess, joyful, or you mentioned exercising. Are there other things you did, or do you do art at all, or music, or?
I really like collecting. Right now it's sort of shoes, coins, and baseball cards, but kind of anything I think I find cool, I kind of like to buy. So that's kind of one of my hobbies that I like doing. And then I think like in order for me to kind of like access those kind of quote unquote hobbies every day, or to be able to kind of let myself like enjoy something, I always feel like I have to do something. And that's why like every day I try to at least like get outside at least once a day. And I start, it's just slightly off topic, but like I start my day every day by like making my bed, just to like get into that routine of kind of, because I think without a routine, I kind of struggle to feed my happiness, because it's just kind of like, well, I have to do this and this and this. And so kind of being able to be in a routine allows me to kind of work out and collect. And I think most importantly is definitely talking and hanging out with other people, 100%, to kind of feed my happiness.
Yeah, that's amazing. And there's a great video on making your bed. And it's one of the things through my company that we teach and we have people do. And I never used to pay attention to that. And then once I started really doing it every day, it's true. You can build your morning routines on something positive, or it can be chaotic and so impact the rest of your day. But now I think, yeah, if I could just make my bed every day, it's a good positive. And I would think that, did you do that in college?
I actually just recently started doing it my last year of college, so probably like May of this year. But it really helps you just kind of get out of bed, and then you're forced to be out of your bed until sleep, so which is nice.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. And then what about, so it sounds like you intuitively set a lot of goals. So our third key is inspired actions, and a lot of the research and science around hope is about goal setting. So you kind of have, hope is about, you have a vision for your future, and then you actually take steps to get there. So like hopelessness is that despair and helplessness. So our third key really looks at that helplessness and how do you get from helplessness to inspired action. And so a lot of that is through goal setting and overcoming obstacles to goals and re-goaling when you need to and chunking down goals. When you, and yet we don't think of it like that. We don't think I hope for something in the future. Well, I should set a plan, like kind of a goal and plan to get there and be flexible and adaptable with that. But goal setting is kind of a part of hope. So when you were in college, did you, I mean, it's impressive. You set your whole plan up going into it. Did you set regular goals for yourself, or was it more of did you have a system for doing that, or was it just kind of more natural?
So I plan out pretty much every minute of my day on my calendar, and I have probably 10 to-do lists, like 10 to-do list apps filled with like hundreds of to-do lists. And so it's really hard for me to kind of sit down and I guess like start on my goals. But something that I really enjoy, or this quote I really enjoyed is, planning is everything, but plans are nothing. And I learned, like, I think I'm kind of at my best when I'm able to be in the moment, when I'm researching and learning, kind of like working towards my small goals for the day. But recognizing that this is life and it's imperfect. So no matter how I set or schedule my day, it will never go that way. And so you have to be, I think, really flexible on the day to day, but be kind of rigid on your long-term vision of what you want in life.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know we know like just writing things down can really, like when I'm high in anxiety, just like writing down everything that's on my mind, everything I'm thinking about, everything I'm juggling is so helpful for me. Just kind of getting it on paper. Whether or not I ever look at it again, to me, doesn't even matter. Just that act of like kind of getting it on paper is super helpful. And it's, yeah, great that, you talk about time blocking, and we know that that's something that has worked for a lot of people in school when we did the interviews for Hopeful Mindsets on the college campus. And then, as you say, to not be, stuck in that, we know if you're way too connected to your goals and you don't meet your goals, then that can have a really negative impact on your mental health and increase hopelessness tremendously. So how do you remain flexible with your goals? Is there anything specific you learned or you do around that?
Yes, it's definitely stopping kind of all or nothing thinking and being thankful for what you did, if it's anything or it's nothing. Because even if it's nothing, you can just look at it as relaxing time. And so just kind of like the way my brain's wired, for kind of like my entire life until my most recent therapist, I never realized this, but I would always just be like, I have to get 100 or I didn't do well. I have to get an A or I didn't do well. I have to go to a top college or I didn't do well. I have to make 6 figures out of college. It's just kind of like all that, just like everything I thought I was, quote unquote, I had to do. However, throughout my time at college and work in therapy, I've been able to realize that that's just like one of the like most toxic mindsets you can have. And so one of the ways I'm able to kind of stop that, is it's like catch it, challenge it, change it. So you catch the negative thought. So like one of them would be, when I would like be feeling down about myself, I would think that no one would really like care about what I had to say. So you challenge it by saying like, I am at UVA, I am qualified to talk here, you know, and then you change it by reminding yourself that your opinion's valid and valued. Because another thing, this is slightly off topic, but it's something that I think is really important to remember is I lost my train of thought, so you gotta scratch that, but sorry.
No, that's okay. No, I think I love the challenge, change it, and wait, what is it?
Catch it,
Catch it,
change it.
challenge it, change it. Yeah. Yeah. So our fifth key is eliminating eliminating challenges, which are really, when we talk about challenges in this respect, we talk about our thinking challenges. And it's like we have so many things that our mind does habitually that we're not even really aware of or conscious of. And it took me so long to become aware of it, you know, that I was living in the past or the future so much of the time, that I had negative bias. So I saw kind of everything through a negative, like our mind goes to those negative things, but also our beliefs. And Dr. Amen talks about automatic negative thoughts, that are those things you talk about that are just kind of habitual ways we talk to ourselves. And I think, you know, we would never talk to other people the way we talk to ourselves. And it's no wonder we get to anxiety and depression, because I wasn't even aware that I was doing it. So when did you kind of is it through college that you kind of became aware that your mind was doing that? And
yeah, it was probably mid 2020. I found my current therapist in Charlottesville, who I really like and was able to kind of be open with, which was one of the first and probably a dozen plus therapists I've seen throughout my years. And her kind of giving me that perspective really helped. And she mentioned something similar to me as well. It's like, would you want to hang out with someone with your mindset about like how you think about yourself? And it's like, no, you wouldn't. And so it's like, you are what you eat and your brain's what you feed it. So you kind of have to have positive thoughts, even if it's not so positive, because it will be.
yeah. Yeah. And I think that's for me why meditation helped, because it helped me kind of slow down. But I think when you talk about like observing it and observing those patterns, I think it's so important that you're doing it when you're in college, you know, I think a relatively young age. It's also, it can help you so much, I think, in life. But it's scary when we finally kind of become aware of how we talk to ourselves, you know, and then you start noticing it and you're like, wow. And then really focus on changing it. One of the things a therapist at some point taught me is like affirming beliefs and limiting beliefs. And I'm like, I would get so annoyed. I'm like, I don't want to, like, I thought you're brilliant and you're very creative, and, you know, and yet it's so important. And that's a part of self-love, and like embracing the self and talking to ourselves in a way that's loving and caring and compassionate. Was so important. Do you have affirming beliefs? Have you ever done any of that?
I don't think I have.
No, yeah.
I'll definitely work on it though.
Yeah, it's like we have in the mindset course, we have people think about like, what are the negative things they're saying to us, to ourselves, right? So like, I'm so stupid, like I didn't do that test well, I'm so stupid. And then it's really, no, is that belief really true? And what do I really need to believe about myself moving, and what kind of positive things do I need to be feeding myself? So it's kind of one of the things we have people do, and I don't know why I'm not a fan of that, and yet it's so important. And we know the evidence, like even around hope, you have to believe that you can learn hope, and that hope is teachable, and that you're worthy of hope, and kind of all of these things. So one of the first things in the college course we have people do is look at their beliefs, and how do their beliefs impact, you know, their lives and like all kinds of outcomes. So I became aware of the nocebo effect, I think maybe last year, maybe it's been probably more, a few years, but we know the placebo, a lot of people are familiar with the placebo effect, that if you believe a medicine is going to have a positive impact, it likely will, and even if it's a sugar pill. And the same is true, or a similar thing is true with nocebo. So if you're taking a sugar pill and you believe it's going to have negative side effects, you're more likely to have those negative side effects. So, what we believe is so powerful and important, and it's such an important part of hope. So we like to kind of talk about that. We talked a little bit about the fourth key, which is nourishing networks. And, you mentioned your mom and sister, and just really supporting you in your journey and the importance for you of connections. And you mentioned as well the counseling center, and getting a therapist and psychiatrist, which has been really helpful for your journey, which is just really great. Are there other kinds of support that you were able to lean into when you were in college?
I think kind of for a support system, it was mainly my family throughout college. However, one tip that my sister gave me that was really helpful for kind of when you feel alone or kind of like no one's on your side, I guess, is to write down everything that you're grateful for, and just kind of keep it with you for when you feel that way. And it doesn't always work, but it is very kind of reassuring to know that even when it feels like no one's on your side, you can kind of like read that list of people or things that you're grateful for. And it kind of can help you just take that next step, which is all you have to do.
Yeah, so important. And I think it also goes to that all or nothing thinking. When we're unhappy and miserable, it's hard to see that gratefulness and what we have going for us, or the connections we do have. And so I think writing it down is it's an awesome strategy. Would you say anything right now to college students that are suffering or struggling with where they're at, or are challenged with their own mental health or stress, anxiety?
I guess the main thing would be that, one, it gets better, but two, to always reach out to someone, because everyone knows someone that's either gone through it personally or has a friend or a family member. And if they're your friend, they will more than likely be very helpful. But I think most importantly, I guess my main message would be to just kind of be kind and generous to everyone you meet, because you never know what someone's going through, and that could make someone's day.
Absolutely. Yeah, it absolutely does. And there are so many resources available. We have on our website a list of the international resources, college campuses. One of the things we do with Hopeful Mindsets, we help colleges build out their Canvas page that lists all of their university resources and then gives them access to the Hopeful Mindsets course on the college campus. So we kind of teach them the how-to of hope. But I think it's so important that, campuses don't react in response to crises, but get more proactive about mental health and ensuring students that are on campus know where to go for support, so that should they find themselves in a place where they need it, they know where to go, or their roommate. So, if anyone's listening and in college, be sure to figure out where your resources are, not just for yourself, but for people that you love and, people that you're connected to in college. I think it's, super important that people reach out. And like you said, things change always. And when we feel despair, it feels like it's going to be here forever. I mean, it just can, and that in and of itself leads to helplessness and a lot of cycling hopelessness. But really understanding that feelings change and experiences change, and despair doesn't last forever. That kind of negative emotional state changed everything for me when I could just learn to stop running from it, but to sit through it and knowing that, eventually it turns around. And so I think that too is a really important something. What about, would you say anything to parents that are worried about their kids in college?
Honestly, I am not. Honestly, I really don't know. Just because my parents have been really good at reaching out, I guess. But sorry, scratch all this. Let me think on this for a second.
Yeah.
Um,
Like what really helped, like, because it's so hard to be a parent and to be loving and not hovering and to be, supportive and not kind of dictative. And so how
no, I
can,
know it's like my mom and I have really struggled with this. That's why I'm like really thinking on this.
yeah,
Okay, so I guess the best answer I can kind of come up with would be to create a safe space for your child to say whatever they need to say. Because with my family, or when I first talked with my mom, I was always like really hesitant to tell her about any drinking or drug use or just kind of stuff like that. However, she was able to explain to me that all that really matters to her is that I'm healthy and alive. And so she can get me help for my drinking problems and stuff like that. And so I think kind of creating that open space would be the biggest thing you can do for students in college.
it's amazing. And so when you say safe space, you mean like reaching out and in a non-judgmental, kind of threatening, open kind of a way, and communicating that to your kids that that's what you're there for, and you're there to support them, and not criticize or judge or belittle or kind of and blame or kind of shame. Is that
100%.
yeah. And it's, when parents are in fear, they're not in their upstairs brain and the most supportive. And yet it's really important. So it's important that parents do the work on themselves too, so that they can get themselves to a place where they can be that safe space for their child if they're worried, or even if they're not worried. It's really hard to know when kids are struggling many times. And so stay connected with your kids if they're in college. For sure. I mean, it's a time of great change, and we know depression and anxiety increase when we go through transitional periods in our lives. Change can be challenging for many people, and so check in with your kids, see how they're doing, and be that kind of safe space for them if you can. So that's wonderful. Is there anything else you want to kind of talk about or mention? So inspired by all you're doing and your journey, and I think you taking on mental health, and you're on being proactive about your own mental health. I know it's a journey, and it was a lot of up and downs for me before I got to the point where I really addressed it. And so I'm really impressed by what you're doing, and then how you're encouraging others to do the same. We know that stigma is still very alive and well, and people aren't comfortable talking about it and getting support and being proactive. And so I'm really grateful that you're out there for youth doing that. But is there anything else you wanted to add before we check off?
Yeah, I guess the last thing. So my book that's coming out next year is about the concept of infinity, and kind of my take on it. And I think the best way I can kind of summarize the concept is kind of living in the present moment while taking past actions of others and yourself into consideration of your choices, but never dwelling or ruminating on them because it's the past and it's already happened, while also still kind of working towards your future and your passion, but not finding a healthy balance between that and not worrying so much that you can't even get out of bed. But most important part of it is just the present moment of the here and now, because the future kind of is now. And yeah.
I love that. Yeah. So how can we learn more about you and your business and your book that'll be coming out and all of that?
It'll all be on my website that should be in the links down below.
Okay, perfect. And what is that website in case they don't have the?
It's tmh.business.
tmh.business. Awesome.
Mhm.
And no.com. So tmh.business.
Mhm.
So you can learn more about Max there. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Max, and sharing your experience and giving us some really great insights and tips. And thank you to all you listeners for supporting our work on hope and spreading the message that hope is teachable. It's a skill you can learn and practice and get better at. Some days are better than others, but there is always a way to get from hopelessness to hope. And it's so important that everyone around the world really knows that, understands it, and starts practicing skills to work to get there. So thank you all so much. And until next week, take care. So thank you all for listening in to the Hope Matrix podcast. We want to shine a light that hope is teachable, hope is measurable and teachable, and provide you with actionable insights for how you can start activating hope in your life today, and provide a framework so you can start talking about hope with other people and practice these skills together, because we are better with hope. Please feel free to check out the shinehopecompany.com, where we list all of our resources around how to hope. We have a lot of free programs for how to hope, including the 5-day challenge, our hope infographic with a lot of skills that showcase how to hope, and articles of how to incorporate hope into your life. We have the Hope Beat Weekly, which is a weekly newsletter that shares strategies for hope. We have a My Hope Story template, so you can write your own hope story today. Also, My Hope Heroes, so we can share what our heroes are doing to activate hope in their lives. And this is especially good with youth, so they can start looking up to people that have overcome similar challenges to them and seeing how these heroes use the Shine Hope framework. We have a Hopeful Minds for Teens program, a Hopeful Minds overview, educator guides. We have a new evidence-based college course so you can activate hope on the college campus. There are programs in the workplace, overview courses, 90-minute courses for learning the what, why, and how to hope. What I want you to know about hope is it's a skill. You've got to practice these skills to become hopeful. It's easy to fall into despair and helplessness when we deal with challenges in life, and it takes intentional work and practice to get to hope. And yet it is always possible. So no matter what life brings, keep shining hope. Thanks so much for listening in. Have an awesome day. And of course, I've got to add that this program is designed to assist you in learning about hope. It should not be used for medical advice, counseling, or other health-related services. I, Fred, the Shine Hope Company, and myself, Kathryn Getsky, do not endorse or provide any medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I am not a medical doctor. The information provided here should not be used for the diagnosis or treatment of any medical condition, and cannot be substituted for the advice of physicians, licensed professionals, or therapists who are familiar with your specific situation. Consult a licensed medical profession or call 911 if you are in need of immediate assistance. And be sure to know the crisis hotline, 988, if you are in need of support. Thanks a bunch for listening. Take good care of yourself and keep shining hope.